Rosa Delgado had been scrubbing the same floorboard for 5 minutes, her calloused hands moving in mechanical circles while her mind wandered to places far beyond the grand hacienda. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows of the Thornton Ranch house, casting golden rectangles across the polished wood, which she had polished herself just that morning. She was Apache, though her grandmother always said she carried the strength of 10 generations in her small frame. At 23, Rosa had known nothing but work, cleaning houses, mending fences, cooking meals for people who rarely looked her in the eye. Rosa. The voice startled her. She looked up to find James Thornton standing in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame. He was a man of 45, weathered by the New Mexico sun, with eyes that had seen both triumph and tragedy. Since his wife Margaret had died 3 years ago, the ranch house had become a mausoleum of memories, and Rosa had become its silent keeper. "Yes, Mr. Thornton." She sat back on her heels, tucking a strand of black hair behind her ear. He cleared his throat, looking oddly uncomfortable for a man who commanded 300 acres and a dozen ranch hands. "The governor's ball is next Saturday. In Santa Fe." Rosa nodded, confused. She knew about the ball, everyone in the territory knew about it. It was the social event of the year, where ranchers and politicians and their elegantly dressed wives gathered to celebrate another prosperous season. It was a world as distant from her reality as the stars themselves. "I need to attend," James continued, his fingers drumming against the doorframe. "For the ranch. There are business connections to maintain, deals to be made." He paused, then said words that would change everything. "Come to the ball with me." Rosa's cloth dropped to the floor. "Me?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Yes, you. But I'm not your wife, Mr. Thornton." She felt heat rising in her cheeks. "People will talk. They'll say terrible things. About you. About me." James stepped into the room, his boots echoing on the floor she'd just cleaned. "Rosa, in the 3 years you've worked here, do you know what I've learned about you?" He didn't wait for an answer. "You read the newspapers I leave on the table. You've taught yourself to speak English better than half the men in this territory. Last month, when the Martinez family lost their home in the fire, you gave them half your wages you've been saving to buy your own piece of land someday." Rosa stood slowly, her heart hammering. How did he know these things? She'd been so careful to remain invisible. "This ball," James continued, his voice taking on an intensity that surprised her, "it's full of people in expensive clothes who've never done an honest day's work in their lives. They look down on folks like you and me, yes, me too. Old money versus new, they call it. But I've watched you transform this hollow house into a home again. Not just with your cleaning, but with your dignity, your quiet strength. If anyone deserves to walk into that ballroom with their head held high, it's you." "I don't have a dress," Rosa said weakly, her mind reeling. "I wouldn't know how to act. I don't know how to dance." James smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in months. "Then we have a week to figure it out. Will you come with me, Rosa? Not as my maid. As my guest. As someone who deserves to be seen for who she truly is." Rosa looked into his eyes and saw something unexpected: respect. Pure, uncomplicated respect. In that moment, she made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll come." The week that followed was unlike anything Rosa had ever experienced. On Monday morning, James drove her into Santa Fe in his truck, the desert landscape rolling past them in waves of red and gold. She'd never been to the city before, her world had been confined to the ranch and the small Apache settlement where her grandmother still lived. "Where are we going?" she asked, gripping the door handle as they navigated the bustling streets. "Madame Levesque's," James replied. Margaret used to shop there. Madame Levesque's dress shop was a revelation. The proprietor, a French woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, looked Rosa up and down with an expression that made Rosa want to disappear. But James spoke to her in a tone that brooked no argument. "This young woman needs a ball gown. Your finest work, madam. Cost is no object." The dressmaker's expression shifted subtly. "For the governor's ball, Monsieur Thornton?" "Yes." A long pause. "Then, I see. Step this way, mademoiselle." For 3 hours, Rosa stood on a platform while Madame Levesque and her assistants measured, pinned, and draped fabric across her frame. They chose a deep emerald silk that brought out the warmth in Rosa's brown skin and made her dark eyes shine like obsidian. "You have the bearing of a queen," Madame Levesque murmured as she worked, and Rosa wondered if she'd imagined the respect in the woman's voice. But the dress was only the beginning. That evening, James hired Mrs. Chen, the widowed piano teacher from town, to give Rosa dancing lessons in the ranch house parlor. Rosa stumbled through the waltz, stepped on her own feet during the foxtrot, and wanted to quit a dozen times. "I can't do this," she said, frustrated tears threatening. "Everyone will see I don't belong there." Mrs. Chen, a tiny woman with iron determination, shook her head. "You belong wherever you decide you belong. Now, again. 1 2 3, 1 2 3. James proved to be a patient partner, guiding Rosa through the steps night after night. As they danced, he told her stories about his late wife, how Margaret had hated these social gatherings too, how she'd said the best moments of her life were riding across the ranch at dawn, not sitting in fancy ballrooms making small talk with people who cared more about appearances than character. "Why are you doing this?" Rosa asked him one evening, as they took a break from practicing. "Really? It's not just about business connections, is it?" James was quiet for a long moment. "After Margaret died, I went through the motions. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. This ranch kept running, but I was just existing. Then one day I overheard you singing while you worked, an Apache song your grandmother taught you. And I realized you'd brought something back to this place that I thought was gone forever, life. Hope. The belief that tomorrow might be better than today." He met her eyes. "People like the governor and his crowd, they see us as less than. Me because I built this ranch from nothing, you because of the color of your skin and where you come from. I'm tired of accepting their judgment. I want them to see what I see, someone extraordinary." Rosa felt something crack open inside her chest. No one had ever called her extraordinary. No one had ever seen her as anything more than invisible hands that cleaned and cooked and served. As Saturday approached, Rosa's confidence grew, but so did her anxiety. Her grandmother visited the ranch, bringing traditional Apache herbs and blessings. "You walk between two worlds now," the old woman said, braiding Rosa's hair. "This is not easy. But remember, you carry our ancestors with you. Their strength is your strength." Rosa touched the small medicine pouch her grandmother had given her. She would need that strength in the days to come. Saturday evening arrived wrapped in purple twilight. Rosa stood before the mirror in her room, a small space off the kitchen that had become her sanctuary, and barely recognized herself. The emerald dress transformed her. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant style Mrs. Chen had shown her, with a few tendrils framing her face. She looked like someone who belonged in the world she was about to enter, even though her hands still bore the calluses of hard work. James waited in the front room, dressed in a black suit that made him look every inch the successful rancher he was. When Rosa descended the stairs, something shifted in his expression, wonder, perhaps, or recognition of a truth he'd been circling around for weeks. "You're beautiful," he said simply. The drive to Santa Fe took an hour. As they approached the governor's mansion, Rosa's throat tightened. Carriages and automobiles lined the curved driveway, and women in glittering gowns floated up the steps like exotic birds. Rosa's instinct was to run, but James squeezed her hand gently. "You deserve to be here," he reminded her. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The ballroom was a sea of wealth and privilege, crystal chandeliers, gilded mirrors, tables laden with food Rosa could only dream of affording. As they entered, conversations faltered. Eyes turned toward them, widening with shock and, in some cases, undisguised hostility. Rosa heard the whispers. Is that Thornton's maid? Has he lost his mind? An Apache girl at the governor's ball? Rosa's spine straightened. She thought of her grandmother's words, of the 10 generations of strength flowing through her veins. She met their stares with quiet dignity. James led her to a group of ranchers and their wives. Some turned away pointedly. Others offered tight, false smiles. But then something unexpected happened. The governor himself, a portly man with shrewd eyes, approached them. Thornton, he said. I heard you'd arrived. And who is this? This is Miss Rosa Delgado, James said, his voice carrying across the room. A woman of extraordinary character and intelligence. Rosa, this is Governor Kendall. The governor studied Rosa with interest. Delgado. Are you related to Jose Delgado? The teacher who's been working with the Apache children? Rosa's breath caught. He's my uncle, sir. Remarkable man. He's doing important work, building bridges between communities. The governor's expression warmed. Tell me, Miss Delgado, what's your view on the education initiatives we're discussing for the territory? And just like that, Rosa found herself engaged in genuine conversation. She spoke about her own limited education, about the hunger for learning she saw in Apache children who had no schools to attend, about the importance of honoring both traditional knowledge and modern skills. The governor listened, truly listened, and soon others gathered around, drawn by the conversation. Not everyone was won over. Mrs. Blackwell, the wife of a prominent banker, made a point of snubbing Rosa entirely. Several couples left early rather than share the room with that Indian girl. But others surprised her. An elderly rancher named Samuel Pierce told Rosa that his own grandfather had been a Mexican sheepherder who'd faced similar prejudice. A young woman named Catherine mentioned that her mother had been a seamstress before marrying into society. We've all got stories, Catherine said quietly. Some of us just hide them better. As the orchestra struck up a waltz, James extended his hand to Rosa. May I have this dance? Her heart pounded, but she placed her hand in his. They moved onto the floor, and Rosa felt every eye in the room upon them. She remembered Mrs. Chen's lessons, 1 2 3, 1 2 3. But more than that, she remembered who she was, Rosa Delgado, daughter of the Apache people, granddaughter of survivors, carrier of 10 generations of unbreakable strength. They danced 3 waltzes that night, and with each turn around the floor, Rosa felt something inside her transform. It wasn't that she'd become someone else, she was still the woman who scrubbed floors and mended clothes. But she'd added a new understanding to her sense of self, she contained multitudes. She could be both the maid and the ball guest, the Apache granddaughter and the woman who discussed policy with governors. These weren't contradictions, they were the fullness of her humanity. When they finally left the ball near midnight, Rosa's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling, but her heart felt impossibly light. As James drove them home through the star-scattered darkness, she turned to him. Why did you really invite me tonight? James was quiet for so long that Rosa thought he might not answer. Finally, he pulled the truck over to the side of the road, where the desert stretched out endlessly under the moon's silver gaze. After Margaret died, I was angry at the world, he said. I went to these social functions and saw people playing games, pretending, judging each other based on the silliest things, whose dress was finer, whose bloodline was purer, whose bank account was larger. And I thought, Margaret would have hated this. She loved authenticity. Truth. Kindness. He turned to face Rosa. You remind me of her in that way. Not in appearance, but in spirit. You're genuine in a world of pretense. And watching you work yourself to exhaustion day after day, never complaining, always giving, I realized I'd been guilty of the same blindness as those people at the ball. I saw you, but I didn't see you. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. I see you too, Mr. Thornton. James, he said softly. Please. Just James. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd crossed invisible boundaries and found unexpected connection on the other side. The following Monday, Rosa arrived at work to find James in the kitchen, making coffee, badly. He grinned sheepishly when he saw her. "I've been thinking," he said. "The ranch needs a manager. Someone to handle the books, coordinate with suppliers, manage the household staff. It pays 3 times what I'm paying you now, and comes with one of the foreman's cottages that just became vacant." Rosa stared at him. "Are you offering me a promotion?" "I'm offering you recognition of what you've been doing anyway, just without the title or the pay. Interested?" Rosa thought about her dream of owning her own land someday. With these wages, that dream might actually be possible. But more than that, she thought about what this represented: being seen, valued, acknowledged not as a maid but as a person with skills and intelligence and worth. "Yes," she said. "I'm interested." Over the months that followed, Rosa transformed the ranch's operations. She implemented efficient systems, negotiated better prices with suppliers, and began a program teaching ranch hands children to read and write, both English and Apache. James became not her employer but her partner in building something meaningful. The story of the ranch owner and his Apache maid who'd gone to the governor's ball spread throughout the territory. Some told it as a scandal, others as a fairy tale. But those who knew the truth understood it was neither. It was simply a story about two people who'd chosen to see each other's humanity in a world determined to keep them separate. And in seeing each other clearly, they discovered something profound: that dignity, respect, and belonging aren't granted by society's approval, they're inherent in every human soul, waiting only to be recognized. Years later, Rosa Delgado would own that ranch, transforming it into a place where Apache children learned alongside Anglo children, where people were judged by their character rather than their bloodline. And she would tell visitors that it all began with a simple invitation: "Come to the ball with me." "But I'm not your wife," she'd said. No. She'd been something far more important: she'd been herself, fully and courageously. And in the end, that had made all the difference.